Hey guys, Greg Alexander, and today I want to go on a little bit of a rant. And I really believe, I'm not just saying this, I'm watching it happen. And I really believe that too much technology in bass fishing is ruining the sport and almost creating two different levels of fishing, two different casts, even the haves and the have-nots. And we can look at the technology that we have today, and I'm not anti-technology. I got a HGS 12 carbon with side imaging on my boat. I have HGS 9 up front with side imaging and a Garmin unit with live sight. Not anti-technology. I still use the technology to some degree. But it's really getting kind of carried away because now we have 3 depth finders up front with 360 imaging and live sight and side imaging, depending on what you want to pick or select or use at the time. And then 2 12-inch units or a 16-inch unit at the dash in these bass boats. And, if you add the price of these units up with their added technology, if you're paying retail price for these, you're north of $20,000, north of $20,000. And to make things even worse is, as soon as you get the newest technology, I got HGS 12 carbon, and then 6 months later, guess what? That's out of date. We did this with computers for years, and I think they finally put like a stop to it. For years with computers, they were upgrading the memory on the computer a little bit at a time when they probably had the technology to move it farther ahead when they did. But see, it becomes a sales and marketing ploy when you can just feather it out to people so that, well, it's a little bit better than what I had before. So in order for me to stay current, then I got to get the Pentium 2 now instead of the Pentium 1, like with the computer. And it's the same thing with these electronics. I had the carbon, but then carbon's not as good. Now you need live. So then you need live. And then after live, then you got to have something else. And it just, every 6 months or every year or every couple years at the most, your stuff's outdated anymore. And so it's not just that you can go out there and say, well, you know what, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to fully equip my boat in a tournament situation with the same thing that everybody else has, and then I'll be set for a while. Well, then you're not set, because next year you don't have the newest Garmin live sight that now reaches out to 500 feet with clear images and looks behind the boat a little bit farther and gives you a wider view of, see, you don't have it. And then, then they're going to widen the cone on it, and then they're going to increase the depth of it. And then before you know it, it won't be blips that you're looking at on their live sight or live scope or whatever. You'll actually be getting a reconstituted video image of what's going on under the water. And so basically it'll be drained the lake. And see, it won't stop. It'll just keep going. And then there'll be those that can afford it and will use it, and there'll be those that can't afford it and use it. And now, just because you can afford it doesn't mean you'll be any good at it, right? See, everybody, fishes a lot of the same stuff without technology, and certain people do better than others because certain people are better at things. So some people will be better at interpreting this than others. But that's kind of not my point here today. So I think we have to get to a point where the amount of technology on these bass boats, at least in a tournament situation, is limited. Now, if you're a fisherman and you want to go out and buy all the technology and go and do whatever you want to do with it, that's up to you. But when we get in a tournament situation, it's not fair. And why do I say that? Am I just saying that out of envy? No, I'm not saying that out of envy. Again, I got some of this technology. I just see what's happening here. Uh, let's take other sports. Here's the analogy. In every other sport out there, it's a level playing field. When you go to golf, you got your clubs. Are there some more expensive than others? Yeah. Do some claim some can hit the ball farther? Yeah, they do. But for the most part, it's the holes in the same place, the distance is the same, and everybody's got the same number of clubs, weight clubs that everybody else has. In baseball, the teams are playing on the same field, the bases are the same distance apart, the pitching mound is the same distance away, the ball's always the same, and you can only have up to a certain length and size of bat. And your gloves are pretty much the same. Football, it's 100 yards long. There's one football. There's men on this side, there's men on that side. It doesn't change. The rules are the same. And pretty much every sport is based around equity, not equity, but equality of conditions and equipment for everybody. But in bass fishing tournaments, that's not like that. Now, they limit the horsepower, obviously, on boats to 250 or what your boat's rated for. And there's no limit on the number of rods for an angler. I mean, if you fit 100 in there, you put 100 in there. There's no limit on the cost of the rods and the reels, That's okay too. I mean, you can buy a baseball glove that costs you $300. You can get one for $49.95. You're going to catch the ball with both. That's not a big deal. But when some of the field can afford $20,000 worth of electronics and can afford to pay for guides in open tournaments before the tournaments come, and things like this gives them an unfair advantage. You understand? It's an unfair advantage. If you're fishing an offshore tournament and the fish are offshore, and you got somebody with 360 imaging and live sight and the best mapping and all the color shading and everything, then their ability to locate fish is better than your ability to locate fish, not because of knowledge, but because of equipment. Right? So it's an equipment advantage. And there's no other sport that I can think of where you have an equipment advantage just based on what you can afford. Tennis, ping pong, pretty much anything you can think of. Swimming, you got a bathing suit and a bathing cap. I mean, diving, everybody dives off the same platform. So the platform is not the same in bass fishing. So there needs to be limits, and I'm all for free market. I'm all for people should be able to buy anything they want to buy. But when you get into a competitive situation, I don't think that the extensive expense required to stay current with fishing equipment is equitable in any way whatsoever. So I would almost propose, if I were on the MLF Rules Committee, or if I was on the Bass Rules Committee, I would almost propose that each boat could be equipped with no more than one unit in the bow and one unit in the stern. You pick it. 360 imaging, Garmin Live Scope, whatever it is. That you pick it, but that one in each one. And that's it. Not 3 and 2, not all this technology all the time. And I just think that needs to be, I mean that's no different than saying, you can only hit with one bat of this size at a time, and you can't use one with a barrel that's bigger than everybody else's. You can't use an aluminum bat in Major League Fishing when everybody else is using a wooden bat. Even if, it's an unfair advantage. So this is my rant on bass fishing technology. You know, I watch some of these young guys in bass and the Bass Opens, and they've kind of risen to the top really quick. Well, you see them in these tournaments where a lot of times where technology is not a big player, you know, shallow water fisheries, muddy rivers, and things like that, where they don't do so hot, you know. But then when you get these tournaments where, you know, the fish are off the bank on isolated rock piles or suspended or on bait balls or things like that, then these younger fishermen who don't have a lot of experience have made quantum leaps in their ability to catch fish, not because they learned how to find fish, but because we can ride around until we see them on our live scope or a live site, and we know they're there and we're going to fish for them. Where all the mystery, see, part of fishing, part of the thing that was so exciting for me as a kid and even as an adult was every cast was a mystery, right? It's like a grab bag. You stick your hand in, you're gonna grab, and you don't know what you're gonna come out with. And the mystery part of it is what's so fun to me about fishing. And now I feel like a lot of the mystery is gone. Now I feel like, you know, it's become catching and not fishing, you know. And just because you can see them on live scope don't mean you can catch them, right? It don't mean it. But there's no more guessing. Is he there or isn't he there? See, my whole life until recently, you know, you could take your 2D sonar and scan over a point and see some bait and some, maybe an arch or something, but sometimes you didn't even see an arch, but you saw bait and you thought, well, there's bait there, maybe there's fish there. And you turn around and you actually had to fish it and try to see if you could catch a fish. You didn't know if you were throwing to a fish. You didn't know if you were throwing by a fish. You didn't know if they were there or not there. And now you know without a shadow of a doubt with 360 imaging and live sight that they're right there. And they're not just right there. They're 25 feet at 1 o'clock to me, suspended off the bottom about 5 feet. So it's 15 foot deep. I'm going to take a 10-foot diver and reel right through them. Or I'm going to drop a jigging spoon right on them. Or I'm going to do whatever, you know, whatever it takes. Because now I don't have to guess that they're here. I don't have to use my instincts. I don't have to try to fish for them. I just got to try to catch them. See, now it's catching. It's not fishing. You understand the difference? Catching is, I know they're there. It's like sight fishing. It's like deep water sight fishing. I know he's there. I'm just going to keep irritating him until I can catch him. And the mystery is all gone. And to me, that's gone too far. It takes most of the fun out of it. Now, I've done some cool things with live sight. You know, I've gotten around stumps and see a fish by a stump and you pull a jerk bait down to him and just stop it there and let it sink right down on his face and he eats it. You know, there's some cool things. And that's cool because it's kind of new to me, you know, to do that. It's cool. But that's not mystery. It's just, again, you've taken the mystery out of it. There he is. He's sitting there right by the stump. You know, we just had a tournament on the upper Chesapeake Bay. And not mentioning no names, but one of the guys that made the top 10 said, yeah, I just put my live sight around on them dock poles and I could see a fish sitting next to the pole and I just cast at him 10 times until he bit it. Well, that's catching. That's not fishing. That's catching. You know, he's there. He's just going to irritate him into biting. And I just think it doesn't need to be a part of tournament fishing. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys probably who, and maybe this sounds harsh, it's not meant to sound harsh, but a lot of you guys who probably can't catch them without the live sight probably disagree with me. A lot of you guys who can afford all that technology and feel like it gives you an advantage are not going to agree with me. But if you're being rational and you're being equitable and thinking about the whole picture instead of your picture. Oh, well, I got the money, I can afford it, it gives me an advantage, I think we should keep it. See, that's looking at things selfishly. And I think for the good of the sport, I think it needs to go back to one unit in the front, one unit in the back. Make it a live site. One unit with live site. But you can't have live site and 360. Okay, pick one or the other. Not both. And if you're going to pick live site, then you also use that for your depth finder up front too. And I just think that's the way it should be. I don't know what you guys think about it. I know what some of you are going to think about it, and I know what others are going to think about it. But for the most part, that's my opinion on the whole deal. Unfortunately, I think our government works kind of like this, that people get into government with good intentions sometimes, and then they get attracted by the fame and notoriety and the money that they can make. And they start passing laws that advance their own agenda. It's called crony capitalism. When I can make a law that forces people to buy something in the name of public safety that I have invested in. And I think there's some parallels here, in the bass fishing game, as far as the corporate bass fishing game with Bass and MLF and some of these other professional organizations, like any other business, they're about making money. And, they make money with sponsors. And some of the biggest sponsors, that they have are Lowrance, Garmin, Humminbird. And those corporations want to make money, and they make money by selling units, right? So it's probably wishful thinking to think that these organizations would say, well, you can only have one unit, when their sponsors are paying them big bucks to put on these tournaments and to use their names in advertisement. So my hope is that it would go to a more equitable one unit up front, one unit in the back. But the reality of it is probably that that's not going to happen. So maybe there'll be a tournament series that stems out of this. I mean, I'm not for watering down the tournament scene anymore. I'm really not for, 15 different national tournament trails out there, everybody competing for their piece of the pie, which gets smaller and smaller when you do that. I'm not really for that. But maybe there'll be a tournament scene that pops up here that is called the primitive tournament scene. You can have a 2D sonar on your boat and that's it. And then you go out fishing. Wouldn't that be something? Then we'd really find out who the actual best fishermen were, and not just the fishermen who have mastered catching through electronics. And you would probably cycle back again to some of these more old school fishermen. Hackman would probably win more tournaments, and Tommy Biffle would probably win more tournaments, and old school, the Denny Brower type people would win more tournaments, because these people learned how to catch fish without technology over and above what other people did. And that would be an interesting tournament circuit. And I'd be more interested in fishing a tournament circuit like that than I would be going out here trying to keep up with the Joneses and upgrading my electronics every year for $20,000, or every couple of years for $20,000 or more is what it'll be. Of course, with every new technology, it goes up. See, now the old live site was $14.99, right? The old Garmin live site was $14.99. The new live scope live site, I get them mixed up, X is, $24.99 to $29.99. It's another $1,000 or $1,500 more than the old one, because it can see farther. So understand, it's never going to end unless people say, we've had enough of buying all this extra expensive stuff. to try to keep up with the Joneses in bass fishing. So that's my rant for the day. Some of you probably will discuss it with me. Some of you probably agree with me 100%. But that's my thoughts on it. Again, if you like to watch my content on a regular basis, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the little like button and share it with your friends. And again, I appreciate you watching, and have a blessed day.